Hello, everyone. This is Dr. George Gonzalez with the Hologram Podcast, and I'm here on it with some very special guests, some very close friends of mine, Dr. Adam and Dr. Emily Youngblood. And I'm so excited to introduce them today because we're going to have them speaking at our homecoming event, November 8th and 9th here in Southern California, Los Angeles, California. And we'd love to have you all come out, save the date, and please come out and come to this event. But today we're introducing Drs. Adam and Emily. Drs. Adam and Emily are experts in neurology, and they're presenting on advanced cranial nerve 8, defining the boundaries of the sound sphere. And also they'll be talking about how reversing the rehabilitation sequence of the cranial nerves, how that could give you a possible boost in rehabilitation ability. So thank you so much for being here, Adam and Emily. And you're in Atlanta right now. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us, George.
Yeah, George, it's good to be here.
So I'm so excited to have you both presenting in November. We have had you both give a presentation at our Module 4 cranial nerve event, and you gave a showcase of cranial nerve 8 demonstrations. And because there was so much that you showed, we had to dial it in and bring it into this sound sphere concept. Would you mind talking about the sound sphere idea and how it applies to rehabilitation?
Yeah, absolutely, George. The basic concept that we're going to go into much more depth into in our presentation will be the dynamic of what a sound sphere is and how you can have blind spots or areas of just lack of congruence in your ability to hear sounds and identify them. So, you know, if I'm snapping here, do I have the ability to find and identify where that sound is actually coming from, and what to do to target to it? That targeting component and the pathways in the brain that are affected can be upregulated, and we're trying to up people's game and give them that ability to just continue to get advanced rehabilitation in this process.
You know, it sounds so exciting, and it reminds me of what I've heard musicians talk about being able to hear sound specifically in the room, and also the the ability that certain people have. I've seen it with blind people and also people who are musicians, the echolocation, being able to move around a room because they can hear the I don't know what it's called, but the reverb or the bouncing of the audio waves from around the room, and being that sensitive. And I know that I'm not that sensitive. I bump into everything if my eyes are closed. But could you talk about that concept of echolocation and why is it important to us?
Yeah, so just like everybody has a somatotopic map of telling us where our body is in space, letting us know that when someone touches our hand, that it's our hand that's getting touched, which finger is getting touched, what kind of thing is touching us. Is it a threat, or is it, you know, a nice pleasant touch? So we all have somatotopic maps that tell us where our body is in space, but we also all have tonotopic maps, and tone just means sound, topic means map. So we have these sound maps that tell us where this sound is coming from in our environment. And so sometimes when those sound maps are off, if I hear something coming from, you know, over in the corner over here, but my map is off, I think it's coming from another direction. And when those maps get mismatched, then it can lead to different issues like fatigue, because your system has to work so much harder to figure out where this sound is coming from. It can lead to things like anxiety, because you're not really sure what's going around you in your environment, and you have to become hyper vigilant to what's going on. So having these imbalances in your sound map can lead to a lot of other issues that, once we correct the sound map and help match those things up better, so we can better isolate where things are coming from in our environment, then it can lead to improvements in things like fatigue and anxiety and other things like that. So it's really an easy, simple fix to kind of match these sound maps back up again, So we're really excited to come teach it at homecoming.
Yeah, and it has profound.
As well, it reminds me of, if I could take terminology from the other areas of neurology to help people understand this. It's the proprioception of the sound, of the sense of sound, is understanding where everything is in space in relation to your body and yourself and the objects that we're talking about. So that's called proprioception in the body. But I feel that similar idea in sound. Does that make sense, or would you agree with that?
I do agree with that. The proprioception components that we have in our joints telling us where we are in space is as equivalent to the sound area as well, because their entire body reacts to it. If you hear something and your neck turns and your balance is integrated into this process, there's so much extra energy that can be saved if you're efficient. And I like to upregulate people's systems and give them that neurologic rehabilitation so they get that extra energy. And there's all sorts of positive benefits that we find from it. For an example, somebody's blood sugars, they may not be taxed as high. So from a diabetic standpoint, reducing their need for insulins because their body's more efficient. Or the spinal stability muscles that keep people in line, we have the ability to regulate that with just the simple portions of cranial nerve 8, sound being one of them, the vestibular being the other, to stabilize the spine. And so people's adjustments can hold better just by upregulating this particular cranial nerve.
It's absolutely a big deal. We all think about our hearing, and this is a more advanced way to test hearing, basically, and understanding that the sound bubble concept, the tonotopic maps, as it's described neurologically, I think it's such a big deal. And we've talked about this, and how difficult is it to add this to the protocol? How much time does it take to check this?
Oh, only seconds. It's something that I've checked on all my patients when I find a problem with cranial nerve 8. As you taught us to snap in the ears and see if there's an area that shows up. If there is, then it drives my question just one level deeper of, do I need to try to dig in and upregulate this next layer? And it's worth seeing. And from a presentation standpoint, especially when family members are in the room, it's such a big deal when you're snapping in somebody's right side and you say, just close your eyes and touch my hand, and they go off 45 degrees the opposite direction. And people are like, that is so simple. There's nothing crazy about the challenge, but it has a profound demonstration ability to somebody that doesn't believe that you can help change their neurology that specifically.
Now, I'm pretty confident I know the answer, but I want to make sure this gets heard, is if somebody is strong in the first test, does that mean that they're strong in their sound bubble?
Not at all. No. Not at all. We actually find that most people who don't even have these concomitant complaints or these corresponding issues, we check them on healthy people who you would not expect to have a hearing issue or expect their sound maps to be off, because they don't clearly present with something that you would think would be related to a sound map problem. And even on a healthy individual, we go through and we check sound maps on people, and even the seemingly healthy people have issues with their sound maps where they're really not as synced up as they should be. So I think it's important to check on every patient, no matter how much quantum neurology care they've been under, no matter how much chiropractic care they've been under. Everybody should be checked with this technique and checked for this issue, because it's a simple fix, but it's really a profound and very powerful fix as well. It can lead to a lot of improvements in other areas.
Definitely important to understand that. This doesn't mean it's all clear. It's a completely separate test, basically. So yeah. You're testing, this is just auditory, and you have the proprioception or the sound bubble or the tonotopic maps. all these different ways of describing this, I think is very, very important. But this is, would be, kind of the intermediate or the level up from the basic cranial nerve evaluation. I know you could add it in right away because it's so quick, but we want to talk about now the concept of reversing the sequence. When I teach neurology, I teach the cranial nerves from cranial nerve 1 through 12, and because that's the way I teach it, that's the way they get worked. But as a rehabilitation strategy, you've talked about reversing that sequence, and I'd love to hear more about that. And of course, cranial nerve 8 is part of that sequence that we just talked about, but what do you think about that?
Well, Adam and I have been playing with this order of testing cranial nerves for a while. Coming from a background of studying with Dr. Ted Carrick in the functional neurology world, they talk a lot about the importance of autonomics and balancing the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. So we want to make sure that everyone has adequate fuel delivery to every nerve in their body, essentially. Because if a nerve is not getting proper glucose delivery and it's not getting proper oxygen, then it can't function properly. So that is what makes the autonomics so important. And there are certain autonomic centers that go all throughout your brainstem that are in the same areas as these different cranial nerves. So Adam and I have been playing with the order in which we test these cranial nerves to influence the autonomics, to balance the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. So you'll have to come to the talk at homecoming and find out which cranial nerves we test in what order and why we do that. But we found that it's a very profound clearing. It really reduces the number of cranial nerves that we need to go fix, because once we fix some of these critical ones, others just seem to improve. And we think it's because of that fuel delivery aspect. Once we fix the autonomics and influence that autonomic system, we get better fuel delivery for blood flow to these different nerves for oxygen and for glucose, and it helps just level up their entire system.
Yeah, George, when you mentioned before that, especially dealing with fragile patients or patients that that you can only treat for a couple minutes before they may become overtasked. This is what kind of drove our work in this direction. Is there's some fragile patients out there that may have a brain injury or may have had a stroke or may have had these other issues that they need specific buildups, and the foundation principle applies just like we found in many other things, that starting at the bottom of the cranial nerves and working our way up goes all the way back to neonatal development. When you're just born, you come out, babies don't track very well. It requires a lot more energy to focus in, and the higher level brain development does that. But being able to use their tongue and latch on is critical for their life, it's life dependent, and then be able to suckle and swallow. So building that area of the primitive reflexes and then working your way up to those more advanced centers helps secure the energy that's needed for the development of somebody that has some issues that need some more ability to get upregulated, and it's drives that factor. So we always test 1 to 12 and then treat 12 to 1.
No, I love it. I think it's a great rehabilitation strategy. As you mentioned, the primary reflexes that give us life, our suckling reflexes, our tongue movement, our ability to speak and swallow, all those nerves are so foundational to quality of life. So by giving our neurological energy to those first, as opposed, in rehabilitation, to use that healing energy to that area first, it makes a lot of sense. And I'm really glad to see you're doing that. And it would be interesting, depending, what another issue on cranial nerves, and it could be a topic for sometime down the road, is depending on what the patient has, if, just to throw out a Bell's palsy for cranial nerve 7 as a concept, but is there a different sequence that is necessary for certain conditions? And, we've played with that idea in the cranial nerve sequencing, at least in conversation, but we really haven't played with it a lot. So I commend you all for exploring and finding this strategy. So I'm very excited to have you both at the homecoming event in November 8th and 9th in Culver City, California, Los Angeles, California area. Very excited. Is there anything that you want to tell everybody about the homecoming events or your experience with quantum neurology that, you know, why they want to come see it?
Well, my very first event that I ever attended was a homecoming event. So I went from meeting you in Las Vegas at the ICAK event to coming to the first event in LA for homecoming. And it widened my horizon of all the docs that you have there that have incorporated quantum neurology into their profession, into their skill set, and how foundational it is and how critical it is to have this particular skill set to incorporate everything else that you've learned. So for me personally, it is what drove me and gave me the bigger picture that I needed to be able to come in and put all my energy into learning your techniques and seeing how I can incorporate all these other components. So the speakers that you have there are always phenomenal, and we're blessed to be able to make it onto your stage finally. So thank you for having us and allowing us to share this concept.
No, absolutely. I'm very excited to have you both very advanced in neurology before coming to quantum neurology. And how would you say quantum neurology, you know, what did it do for what you were already doing? Are you doing anything different, or does it add to what you've already been doing before? How would you describe that?
I've noticed since starting quantum neurology that after I learned quantum neurology, it gave me more of a structure to start with. So it's kind of like if you compare it to in chiropractic, we have the foundational theory, basically, where we want to bounce someone's pelvis first before working up into, you know, their thoracics and cervicals and all that. And I view quantum neurology kind of as that foundation where, you know, it would be that pelvis structure almost, where you want to make sure that you have these basic functions in the nervous system on. You want to make sure that they're functioning adequately before you jump into some more advanced concepts. And that's not to say that you can't make some real neurologic changes without quantum neurology. You definitely can, but I've found that I get much faster improvements with people when I start with quantum neurology. And then once I have their foundation strong, I can jump into more advanced concepts, and their improvement just happens so much faster than if I was just jumping into an intermediate or an advanced technique or an advanced concept. So getting this foundation has been really, really integral for me, and I think it's something that I'm gonna keep using for a lot of years.
Well, the concept of stacking, to be able to use anything else that you have and to stack them, and that there's a brilliance behind being able to stack things together. And whether it's part of the lily pad, the tree of development, or if it's going into their lesion area and being able to have them get into an organ system or into an area that there are, and then see what other areas, whether it be myotomes or cranial nerves that are off. It's powerful, and it's a good way to get into our system and be able to upregulate somebody's nervous system. So there's so many advanced areas out there, but we need a foundation for it all to work together. So thanks, George, for giving that to us.
Hey, I love it. I'm excited to see people like yourselves that were already experts in neurology bring on quantum neurology and be able to utilize this in a functional way, not demeaning or getting rid of your knowledge from before, but adding value to the knowledge that you've already invested in. And it's exciting, so I love it. So thank you for sharing. I look forward to seeing you all on November 8th and 9th in Culver City, California, Los Angeles area. And please be there and save the date and check the links below or wherever they are so that we'll get you in. All right. Thank you so much, Adam and Emily, and we'll be talking soon.
Thanks, George.
Thanks, George. Bye.